A note before we begin. This conversation includes discussion of childhood abuse and trauma. Donna shares her story with great courage, and some parts may be hard to hear. Please take care as you watch or listen, and pause whenever you need to. If you're affected, support is available. You can call Lifeline on 13 11 14 and 1800 RESPECT by calling 1800 737 732.
Welcome back to Kintsugi Heroes, helping people tell the stories they need to share so you can find the stories that you need to hear.
Hello, Donna, and thank you for sharing your story on Kintsugi Heroes today. Donna, your story is quite harrowing, or parts of your story are harrowing, about your horrible childhood. And parts of the story I imagine will be hard to talk about. So I just want to start by honouring you and honouring your courage for sharing the story with us today.
Thank you. Thanks, Natalie. It really is an honour to be here and to be able to share my story as well.
Let's start at the very beginning. Let's start with your early childhood and your earliest memories of childhood.
So, strange enough, I have memories from 18 months old, which is quite unusual for most people. They struggle to remember their childhood. But for me, from, pretty early age, 3 onwards is really strong memories. And that's because of the abuse that has, you know, made me aware of everything so much earlier than most people who just, toddle along in life and just have the normal milestones and things to deal with. Yeah.
Mm. You can remember it
So,
all.
yeah.
We start from perhaps your earliest memory.
So I suppose the key starting point for me was a memory at Christmas time, and my mum was in hospital, um, and Christmas Eve, should have been excited about getting up and getting presents, and already had that, my mum being in hospital and, be missing from the family. But then, that was also the first major memory I had of abuse by my father. So that was not a very good Christmas at all,
Mm.
and was the beginning of a regular series of sexual abuse
Donna, how
through
old were
my.
you then?
I was 3. I was
Right.
3 at that time. When I was 18 months, I remember just crawling on my hands and knees down at my great aunt's place and finding refuge in a laundry basket and hiding myself in under the laundry and going to sleep. And unbeknownst to me, everybody was frantically looking for me. But I just remember this feeling of needing to escape and just needing to find refuge. That was an unusual memory to have, but it's made sense as I've gone on my journey of healing along the way. I've got memories of at preschool being picked up by taxis. My dad was a taxi driver as well. Being picked up by taxis, the preschool thinking I was being taken home, but in fact being taken to paedophiles places and, allowed to be used as their play toy. I had a lot of healing around claustrophobia because I would get locked in chests and cupboards, and you still can't pin me down because that fear of not being able to be free. So, just being pinned and abused. There was a lot of trauma around that as well. And it's like you wear this beacon on your head, pedophiles, freebie here. This person's not going to say anything. They've got your secret.
Right.
So you find that wherever you go, you get into situations where you get honed in on. by these sort of pedophiles. And I remember when I was about 10 walking home, just been playing tennis with my friend and walking home and had not got up far past her house, and this car pulled up with 5 guys in it, and they're trying to drag me in, and I just remember swinging for my life with the tennis racket and managing to get away and run back down to my friend's house, and told her dad that these guys had just tried to grab me, and he went running out and the car went spinning around the corner and actually hit pedestrians. And
Oh,
yeah, he went down and told the police. So I was not involved with all that follow up, but it was like, wow, it's sort of happened again.
yeah, yeah.
When's this going to sort of stop?
So it was happening at home and also outside of your home as
On the
well.
street, yeah, yeah, on the street as well. Um, And then, when I was 12, I used to regularly go down to Sydney and stay with my grandma, for school holidays. And there was, as my brothers got older, it was just sometimes me go down there, because they had, like, other camps on or something like that that they were involved with. And I remember I was 12 and had gone down to Sydney and stayed with my grandma, and she was getting on and probably getting a little bit, she ended up with dementia, and I dare say like she had a little bit of onset, and not understanding, that I was so young, and asking
Mm,
me to go on an errand to go catch a bus and go to the
mhm.
shops and get some items. And I misfollowed directions and ended up down at a dead end, and there was workmen and works going on, and I was like sitting at this bus stop, and I'm like, I don't think there's buses gonna come here.
Right.
And I could see these guys sort of staring at me. And by the time I realized I was in trouble, I was trapped. I was cornered. So as I tried to sort of slink past unnoticed, of course I was grabbed. And there was 4 of these workmen, and they held me captive for a couple of hours and just gang raped me repeatedly.
And you were,
So
did you
then they
say 12?
finally released me. 12. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So, I was bleeding and, in a
Oh,
lot of pain, and when they finally let me go, I was like, "Okay, so I have to still find out where I have to catch this bus and go and get these groceries and go back to grandma's." Um And it was interesting because, I did that. I learnt just to soldier on and get done what needed to be done. And, my grandma had no idea that I was gone so long.
mm,
She
right.
didn't question anything. It was like, "You're back. Here, put my groceries away," and,
Wow.
yeah, so it was
Wow.
like
No idea of the trauma that you've just been through.
no idea at all. And it was like, okay, well, that happened. I just have to get back together and just keep moving on because that's what you learn,
Carry on.
you know?
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So again, it's just, you got that beacon and it just keeps flying at you. And you're like, when's this gonna stop? Like when does this never ending loop stop happening
Mm.
with it?
And
So, yeah.
and Donna, after that event at your grandmother's house, were you able to download and cry it out, or was it always on?
Yeah, you have to, like, let a certain amount out. So, I just went and sat outside and in the grass and had a little yep. But you learn not to let yourself get into the state where you're heaving and you're inconsolable. You can't let yourself get to that stage of release. It's like a little bit of tear and then pull yourself back together and just let enough out that you can pull yourself back up. That's how you survive it, because as soon as you become inconsolable, then questions are asked and, help is offered, and you're like, well, I can't let any of that in. I can't let somebody into what's going on. It cascades from that early trauma, and where you're told, secret, you can't tell anybody, there's consequences. So that's just inbuilt, and it travels on every journey and every situation. Even if it's different people and you're a different age, it's still imprinted so heavily into you as part of these are consequences. And when it
And
comes
what were
from
the
your father,
consequences, Donna?
that's a discipline. Well, the consequences are, that, you'll regret it, that you'll be dead. It's just severe consequences for
Yeah.
betrayal, as they see it. It's betraying them. And
Yeah.
because you've grown up in a society to, respect your parents and they've got the authority, you don't question it. You don't,
Yeah.
you
Or innocent.
you don't have the courage to defy it. It's not
Yes.
that you don't know that it shouldn't be that way. It's you don't have the
Yeah.
courage to defy it because it's such a strong authority figure that's over the top of you. So yeah.
So it was a constant, were you living in a constant level of fear?
You are, but it's a fear of speaking up, it's a fear of having a voice and saying something that is going to cause consequences. And just you don't know in reality what they are, but it's like when your parents say, you do as you're told or else. You never know
Yeah.
what the or else is. It's just enough to have you going, okay, I can never do that. So it's that
Are you
sort of
under
fear.
control? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. Um, yeah, so I suppose then my next thing is, being pregnant at 15, and had a boyfriend who was 5 years older than me. And the first person who showed interest in me, of course, I grabbed hold of as thinking, this is my escape, this is my safe person, this is the person who loves me. And to an extent there was a range of that, but both of us way too young to even know what that really was about. So in amongst it all, didn't have the talk about safe sex or anything like that. Parents knew that I had a boyfriend, 5 years older. There must have been suspicion that I was becoming sexually active as well. So there was no talk about being on pills or safe sex or anything. So of course I fell pregnant at 15, and my boyfriend and I had actually split up. But I said to him, look, you're going to have to come with me and tell my parents. And of course the reception to that was not very good. And it was like, well, you need to get married. And I went, well, we're not getting married. Well, then
At
there's no
15?
place for you here. We're not going to deal with this. So a taxi was called and I was given $10, told that in an hour a taxi was coming to get me. And wherever $10 took me was where I was allowed to go, basically.
Right.
So it's like,
Wow.
right, well, I don't know where I'm going to go. So the only place I had to go was my ex-boyfriend's. So I rock up there, and they were kind enough to take me in and let me work out what I wanted to do with the pregnancy as well, which was quite good. Massive decision. But you know what? I just went, I am not in any position to be looking after a baby. So,
Yes.
of course, at that time, abortion was illegal. in Queensland as well. So
Uh-huh.
we had to go over the border into Tweed Heads. My boyfriend's mum came down with me and supported me, which was really nice. Unfortunately, at the clinic, there was a doctor on call that day that shouldn't have been in practice and actually was removed from practice after many complaints were made to him. So instead of having the experience of being under anesthetic, we were given half a Valium, and that was supposed to be enough. The girl who went in first, the Valium knocked her out, and she she was okay. I was second in, and I was wide awake to the world.
Wow. Oh my
So
gosh.
the procedure, needed to have a injection to numb all the uterus, and of course that was rather painful. So I screamed, and I was told to shut up,
Oh my
and that
gosh.
when the remains of the baby was extracted out, I was forced to look at what I had done.
Oh
So
my
there was,
gosh.
yeah, a lot of trauma, a lot of,
Mm. Donna.
yeah. So anyway, we made it through that journey.
Mm.
And of course, I had to leave from living with my ex-boyfriend and his parents. That sort of had to come to an end. So I left there and couch surfed for a while, and then ran out of places to go. So ended up back at home, which was not ideal, but it was at least a roof over my head and gave me space to find my feet and where I was headed next. I ended up with a friend, and I don't know how, and I can't even really remember details about this friend anymore, but we ended up at this party. I was 16, ended up at a party, and I didn't know at the time, but I was set up. I was set up by my friend, and she did it out of fear. She was a real nutcase. She was a real bully. And her cousin apparently liked me and wanted to have sex with me. And so I had turned him down. So apparently this was a way to get him what he wanted. So my friend set me up to go to this party and left me there. And then I wasn't allowed to leave. And the cousin, she had me at knife point while
Right.
this guy, her cousin, just raped me repeatedly for 2 to 3 hours and then let me go. It was about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. And I had no means of transport at all. So I ran probably 10 kilometers and was headed to the police station. And then just, when you're with the pedophiles and you see what people are in there is judges, policemen, people that should be your safe place.
Mm.
And I went, well, I can't go there. So I ended up on a train station with a purse full of Valium. And I just went, can't do it anymore. Let's just swallow all of you and say goodbye. Yeah. So I did that. And next thing I knew, I was in hospital. Apparently, a lady catching the first train found me and called an ambulance.
Thank goodness.
I was dead on arrival at hospital, and they revived me.
Oh.
And then because of the fact that I had tried to take my life, they needed to get the police involved. So as soon as they said that the police were on their way,
Mm.
I went,
Alarm.
I'm going to get out of here. So I
Mm.
quickly grabbed my clothes and bolted, and I ended up hiding in the bushes. I can't remember how I contacted my ex-boyfriend, or whether he was also contacted to, because he was the only person around to help me. I think the hospital must have contacted him to come and, come to the hospital. And so I grabbed my things and I hid in the bushes until he come, and I jumped in the car and took off. And of course, 16, I had no ID on me. So, yeah, they didn't get a name or anything from me, and I just took off. And I was like, wow, like, this is
Surely it's got to get
where do
better.
I go? Where do I go? So, I ended up working and, making friends, and just started drinking and went down the path of, just being constantly alcohol in my system. I could drink a lot before I sort of showed any signs of being drunk. So it all pretty much was a waste of money anyway, but it was that vice to keep you socializing and keeping you out of the house, because, I was still living at home at that stage. And then, funny enough, at the pub, I met my first husband. I should have left him at the pub. I should never have jumped on board that crazy train, but I did. So it was funny, because when I first met him, I didn't particularly like him. And when I left him, I definitely didn't like him. So somewhere in between, I convinced myself that, this person would do. So, you start just settling for whatever's put in front of you, because you just
Hoping
don't
he was
see.
better than hoping that he was a better
Exactly.
option
It was,
than
and it
staying
was,
at home.
you think it's exactly right. You think it's a step up from where you've been. And to start with, it felt like it was, there was just that normalcy to life. And I couldn't say that there was, it was a happy life, but there was moments of, being happy in amongst it, I suppose. But it was just not being where I previously was the main thing. But little did I know that I had fallen into the hands of a narcissist and an abuser, and they gain your trust. And then once they feel that they've got you hook, line and sinker, then you have the abuse start. So he would, just force himself on me. And, people find it hard to believe that there's a thing called rape when you're in a consented relationship. But, there is a viciousness, there is a forcefulness, and, when you don't want to be participating and you're being held and you're being hurt and abused, then that is being raped, So I would end up bleeding, bruises, and it wasn't just rape. It would, because I had a bit of fight in me, I'd try and stand up for myself, and I'd end up flung across the room and, smacked around. And at that stage, I just had no fear, I'd be like giving it back, and I'd just, end up hurt. He'd end up going off with his mate, and I'd be left alone going, how am I going to escape this, Um, and stupidly, I was engaged to be married to him, had started organising the wedding, and that was when it started escalating. The abuse was escalating, because he thought, got a hook, line and sinker, Fell pregnant at 21 to him, and his reaction was to punch me in the stomach. That's how overjoyed he was. Um, so I just went, well, you know what? If I was unsure that I didn't want to be here before this, I certainly am positive now that I do not want to be in this. So back for another round of abortion, but this time it was legal. It was in Queensland. It was under, the anaesthetic, and there was no trauma around that. It was like, right, that's good. I've made that one. So as I was walking down the aisle, I knew that I was just playing a game of timing to get
Okay.
myself out. So people say to me, why did you go through with the wedding when you knew that you weren't going to go, stay in the marriage?
Yeah.
But when you're with someone who is so calculated and vicious and you're
Yeah.
scared for your life, you
Yeah.
have to plan your escape. You have
Yeah.
to play a
Strategically.
game
Yeah.
and plan and work your strategy of escape. So
Mhm.
you you just have to play the game. So I knew walking down the aisle that I was not staying with this man, but it took some time. So needless to say, the honeymoon was horrific. Didn't want to be there, didn't want to be touched, and of course that's part of a honeymoon, right? So that wasn't happiest of memories. But I finally had enough money saved up and had the timing exact, and I moved out, got myself a little townhouse, and was working. Had my own job, and I didn't realize I'd made good friends with this lady at the same time, but I didn't realize that he knew where I worked, and I
Right.
knew he didn't know where I lived. But he
Right.
followed me home one day from work, and I'm unlocking my townhouse to go in, and next minute I've got him behind me, and of course he's not a very happy boy. So, gold bracelet down the incinerator and Biffo Puncho, and I'm like, right, well, now my safe space has gone.
Mm. Yes.
What do I do now? So my friend, she said, look, I've met someone and I'm moving to Mount Isa. Why don't you pack up your house and come with me? And I went, that sounds amazing. So that's what we
Mm.
did. We put our houses into storage, all our furniture into storage, loaded up our cars, and we followed each other up to
Best.
Mount Isa on this journey. And unbeknownst to me, this guy that she'd met was working with my second husband, who I'd not yet met, and we were matchmates. But I land there, and this guy's there under the pretense of fixing up the reception on the TV or something like that. And I mean, I'm on the run from my first husband. I'm not interested in a new relationship. I still haven't unfolded from that relationship and
Yeah.
fresh on the run, but he was a little bit caught by me and determined. So he started chasing me hard. And it was funny, just as the point where he gave up chasing me and gave me a little bit of breath, I thought, you know what? Maybe I should give this guy a chance. And
Mhm.
he was in the process of traveling around Australia, and he was living with his brother to save up more money to keep doing the rest of his journey. And he was ready to go in, like a couple of months' time. And he invited me to go with him. And I was like, holy hell, what do I do? What do I do? And I went, do you know what? What's the worst that can happen? Nothing that I've been through
Mm. Mm.
can be worse than what could happen if I just take a chance. Best
Yep.
chance I took.
Great.
He was
Thank goodness.
amazing. Yeah. It was like, oh my God, I've got this man who is genuine, he's loving, he's got no gene whatsoever within him that is a sexual predator. He just nurtured me, and he was my rock.
He's
And
kind.
I just don't appreciate so much what he was. And I'm like,
Mm.
I know there was times where I made things more difficult because of the fact that I didn't realize that I hadn't really verbalized what had happened to me. I
Yeah.
hadn't really, I said to him, I've been abused by my dad, but he thought it was only a couple of times. In here, I was telling the story. Here, there was not much coming out. Yeah.
Right.
But,
You
he
minimize.
stood by me and just, accepted me for
Mhm.
the journey that I had to make. There was times where he pushed me when he knew I needed a little encouragement or a little bit of, extra sharp. But he was very patient with my journey as well, and probably didn't see me as damaged as what I saw myself. Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So
So you married? You married
we
him?
got married, yeah, had 2 children, and, the moment I fell pregnant, with my son, of course, I was terrified of telling him because of, the track
Past
record.
experience. Yes.
Um, and I told him, and he was like, "Wow, you know, I'm gonna be a dad." And it was totally, totally different response, Um,
Wonderful.
and he wanted then with his upbringing that he wanted to be, the man who then let's get married and, stand but show you that I'm committed, and so he had to get a bit of Dutch curry to ask me to marry him because he was so nervous. And I just went, "No, I'm not gonna marry you. You're not gonna marry me just because I'm pregnant." So he had some convincing to do that that's not what it was about, and he certainly proved that over the years. We went on to have a second child, and he was just the best dad. He was just the
Wonderful.
best husband and dad. Yeah. Yeah. So, along that journey of having him, he allowed me to go on my healing journey. So, at the age of 38,
Mhm.
I finally had the courage to tell somebody my story in completion.
Yeah.
So
Finally in a safe place.
finally, yeah, where I can just go now, okay, I can have my breath, and like I had been doing healing, different modalities and different things all along the way, but this was the big moment where the true speaking up and healing
Okay.
started. And it's funny, at the age of 38, I was still so tied in that fear of, you know, my my father instilled in me of not being able to speak up and have a voice, and I couldn't understand why I had all these issues with my throat, not being able to swallow and, all of these things. And I understand now that was this gripping of, you know, fear of speaking up, and
Yes.
having a voice. Um, so, I went and had this, my first hypno session, and it was mind blowing, with what it opened up and what it allowed me to do, and, a safe space to be in under hypnosis, to confront my dad and do lots of things, in a safe space. So, that was when I wrote a letter to my dad and went, "I'm not gonna protect you anymore. This is your responsibility. You know, I'm not trapped anymore." And apparently when he read the letter, he went and threw up, which
Right.
is, I've been told, is the guilt, you know? It's all of that guilt that had been sitting there with him. So that was so freeing. It was hard to get to that point, but once I did, then that just cascaded a journey of quick release and, onto the next thing. Then you have a rest, and you have a reprieve, and you have an outpour, and then
Mm.
you build the strength, and then you do the next bit and the next bit
Mm.
on the journey.
Because you felt empowered in relation to that the trauma with your father.
Yeah, exactly right. And, just that support of this loving man all along the way was what kept me upright and kept me feeling safe as I went on the journey. Because sometimes you feel like you're losing your marbles on the way. And then at the age of 44, we were gearing up, for kids finishing school and going to uni. And I went, right, well, I need to go see a psychologist and have some last sessions just to make sure that I'm stepping into this next phase of our life, just being us, and the opportunity to have, intimacy without, other people in the house and, the interruptions. And I just wanted to be free and the best person I could be in the relationship. And I finished those sessions and I come out the end and I went, do you know what? I finally feel like I can stand beside my husband as an equal. And,
Good.
I just felt like I was finally on the other side. And that lasted for about a month. And then we found out that he had cancer, pain in the hip. Went and got it checked out. All of a sudden, he couldn't stand long enough to make a coffee. And the doctor said, well, we better do a scan. And he had this massive lump attached to his bladder. And the renal nerve was what was running across and causing the pain in his hip. And so then he was in biopsy, 6 weeks in hospital on chemo. And unfortunately, the cancer that he had was very aggressive, rare in adults. And, when they found it, it was 13 by 10 by 9 centimetres. And we found out that cancer, once it's larger than 5 centimetres in an adult, it's fatal.
Right.
So we were then told that he was terminal. Yep, he had 2 weeks to live.
Wow.
So, yeah. So then
What a shock.
I lost him. Yeah.
Ah,
So then I had to heal from grieving,
yeah.
massive, massive grieving. It was so unexpected. So
Donna, for how many years were you together before he passed away?
so we met when I was 21. So we were together 23 years. Yeah. Yeah. And he was 47. He was so
Right.
young.
So young.
Yeah, so young. And, just took the world by shock, that this was happening. So, yeah,
So then there was grief.
yeah, a new type of grief, and I was sitting there in my journey of healing and I went, I'm a great believer that, we're given set lessons each lifetime that we live. And I was like, when I was up there ticking the box, somebody should have taken the pen off me because I went, well, I'll have the lot this time round. I'm like, well, this life of mine up to that point had been all about loss of childhood, loss of innocence.
Yeah.
And then, loss of love was, yeah, it was some hard lessons,
Yeah.
But you know what? I've learnt so much along the way. I've learnt a lot about people and their behaviours and, about myself and how the healing process, can sometimes be a real mind game as
What do you
well.
mean by that? What do you mean a mind game?
So, like, I spent a lot of time in my trauma, just reliving the events like a never-ending movie reel. As soon as I closed my eyes, just going in and in and in the same thing. I was never in the why is this happening to me? I figured that out, at the age of 3, that this, and I think it was because it happened to me so young, and you don't understand what it's like to, to blame somebody or at that young age. And it's just like, well, this is just happening to me. There's, I'm not doing anything that's causing this except for being alive. So it was, but people, they do get into that blame game and
Self-blame.
thinking self-blame. Your self-worth gets battered massively.
Yes.
And it's because of that control that these people have over you. And you then go, well, why have I given them that control? How can I stop that from happening? And it all plays in your mind. So you end up so caught up in your mind that you become paralyzed because you've been trauma.
So while you're healing, recovering from all that past trauma,
Yep.
how did you master?
I've been lucky in the sense that I'm a very spiritual person, and very since got accreditation as a psychic medium. So going along that line of healings and learnings, it really opens you up to how to center yourself, how to realign, and it gives you a new power. It gives you, you're fed into the fact that yourself is beautiful, and you've got this power within you to and focus, and you can redirect your thoughts and your energy. And it was interesting that it was the point where I made the decision to break free of the cycle that I then ended up with my beautiful husband as my reward, or as that person who was there waiting for me. It was like his timing of being there was exactly when I was ready to escape the energy that I was in. And I fought for it. I fought for me. So I think, when you get to that point of fighting for yourself and something different is when you shift that energy within you, that you then open yourself up to receiving a different energy. And I didn't understand it at the time. It was a hindsight moment, of further down the track and further learnings.
So you
along
made
the
that
way.
commitment to yourself to be well and end those patterns past.
Yeah.
It's time to
You
take care
learn
of.
too that other people, you can't control them. They're on their own journeys, the same as you're on yours. So, people that you think they should have been there to help me, or didn't somebody see this? It's like, well, what were you projecting, or what is going on for them that they were focusing on what they needed for them to survive? And it doesn't have to be something as traumatic as what I went through. It's traumatic to them.
Yeah.
You learn to look at what's going on for people and go, okay, that person's really pissed off and they're an angry person, but why are they like that? What's going on for them that's causing them to be that way? And, there's a lot of time abusers have been abused themselves. And so it's a taught trait, behavior. Some of it's caused by, them lashing out and not knowing how to deal with everything that they've endured or they've seen. They don't know how to help somebody else. So there's many different things around it. So I think you just got to take control of you in your healing journey.
And look after you, look after yourself,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
understanding that everyone has their own individual journeys, and you can't control them, but you can be in control of your life and take
exactly,
care of you the best way you can.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Donna, what other tools have you used to recover? So you have mentioned earlier seeing a psychologist, seeing a was it a hypnotist? What other tools have you used?
Oh, look, there has been, the hypnotherapy, as I said, was was a big one. Kinesiology, even just having, readings from different people. Once I got through to a certain stage, it was actually my daughter through her uni and studies. She said, "Mum, I think that you would benefit from EMDR." And I'd not heard of it before. And I found a psychologist that dealt with it. And what it does is, I was talking before about the memories that are so vivid and playing like movie reels, and you're just trapped in it. Apparently, when you've been through trauma, these memories are separate to the emotion. They don't connect. And you do that out of a matter of survival. And I suppose that impact of the trauma just displaces everything. And while you're sitting there watching a set of fingers going in a pattern in front of your eyes, the memory and the emotion connect. And that then allows it to be archived and put in your memory library on a
Mhm.
shelf. And
Right.
it's you can still, you still have the memory, but you don't have that emotion attached to it. So when I'm sitting talking about something, it's not in the trauma of what was happening at the time. That has gone, and that was
So that was
that
all
was life
EMDR.
changing. It was life changing because it gave me that freedom then to just eventually the memories just start fading, and you can bring to the fore better memories, memories of what's happening
Right.
now, and really start living and enjoying emotions that
Yeah.
are emotions. Because when you're
Yeah.
in trauma, trying to pull up that happiness and that you feel like a fraud, it's
Mm.
so much energy to pull up
Right.
from when you're so down, depressed, that vibrates so low, that energy. So it frees you and it allows you to be at a neutral, and then it's not a very high
Mm.
road to get to something happier and lighter. You can start feeling wonder and awe in a life,
Mm.
and hope,
Yeah.
which is
Good.
a major, major emotion for moving forward. Having
Hope.
hope and,
Yeah.
yeah, belief.
Donna, at what point did you feel safe enough to share your story with your close friends?
Um, well, probably only about 8 years ago, to be honest. Yeah.
And how did they
So,
react? How did your close friends react when
well,
you divulged?
they were
The,
just so, empathetic to me. And, I reconnected with my school friends, and they had no idea what I went through and what was going on for me. There was friends that I had that I knew just because I was in that energy and space. I didn't know details, but I knew something was going on for them as well. And it's so liberating for my friends to know that despite all of that, you know, I've made it to the other side. And to me, I'm no different to the person I was at school,
mm,
because that was the me that I saw. And funny enough, I always felt like there was two me's. There was the me that went to school, had the friends and had, sports and everything. And then there was the me that endured the horrific life. And we were
mm,
separate. And I since found out when I was doing this EMDR, my psychologist had to actually bring the two parts of me in a session back together because I
Right.
had actually separated. So, as that survival. So I couldn't get out of that survivor mode until I felt like didn't have that survival person, that person who needed to survive as part of me anymore. So that was a really interesting
Mm.
part of the journey
Mm.
with that.
Can you tell us what you mean by weeding your garden and how that helped you?
It's you realize, what's dragging you down, I suppose, and you start really having a look at who you want to be around you and be part of your life. And
Mhm.
there's people that are there that are either attracted to your energy or they're there for a reason. You have these people that like poke the bear and then disappear. Or those people that come in and they wrong you in some way and teach you a lesson and disappear. But when you are trying to lift yourself up to a different energy, you need to shift those people that are keeping you down and those people that are in their own misery. And as much as we don't want people to be there, they're not our responsibility. So you
Yeah.
might have to say, I need to keep you at a distance, or I just need to cut you from my life. And I've done some really hard cutting people from my life. And some
Mhm.
people view me as very harsh for doing that. But I do it because I need to close that chapter. I need to have those positive people that want to uplift and drive ahead with me. It doesn't mean
Mm.
that I still can't help somebody, but I don't stay attached to them anymore.
Yeah.
And you sometimes do have to just close those doors,
Yeah.
family members, lifelong friends, whoever they may be. And some people say, oh, but they're family. I see them here and see them there, but it's energetically how you let them attach to you. So you might have somebody who you're still having to deal with at those family gatherings and that, but you just don't let them attach to you. You don't let them affect you and pull you down. So that's you weeding the garden, the flowers that you want to grow there.
Yeah.
You don't need the manure to make them grow. Just you just don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Donna, earlier you did touch on some of the wisdom that you've gained along the journey. What are some other gifts that you see have come from your experience?
I think it's just the empathy, towards people, and that being able to look at things with a different perspective. And I can easily help somebody who's caught up in a problem just to be able to look outside of themselves and see something from a different point of view. Just change their thinking on something and see that there's hope, and you can see them change in front of your eyes. You can see their energy shift, and you can see their shoulders lift and their eyes get a little bit of, spark of hope. And, they feel like they've got direction to go instead of just feeling a little bit lost. So I think for me, that has been one of the greatest gifts of all my suffering. Has been to offer that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
advice would you give other women who are victims of abuse and perhaps in that situation right now?
Look, I think the key is to speak up, is to just let somebody know what's happening to you, and however the help cascades from there. As soon as you speak up, you disempower the person who is, abusing you and threatening you. because they lose that power. There's no threat that they will carry forward with that. When you have spoken up, it's known. You've got all these people now coming in, and you'll find that people actually did have a sense of what was going on when you speak up. But there's definitely so much help out there that you're not going to be alone, and you're not going to have to face and go into dangerous situations with at all if you don't need to. Somebody can go in for you, but they will just lose their power. Your silence is what gives them the power. Have a voice, speak up. Yep, and it'll just break prison cell door wide open.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And Donna, what does your life look like now? What is life like for you now?
Well, for me, it's far more peaceful, and I get a sense of freedom to live the life that I want, the freedom to just have in my life who I want. Freedom from the past, just knowing that is now in the past and becoming more and more a distant memory. The past that I remember are, those happy moments in my life. And everybody has those moments. They just get suffocated. So for me now, it's just being able to just have freedom to live and be happy.
Mm. Mm. And are you working full time?
So I do work full time. My hopes and what I'd love to do is grow a business plan that I have for healing. Whether that intuitively with cards or without cards, I can connect to somebody and really tune into them. It's funny, my daughter's a psychologist, and she said, we do similar things just in different ways. And I can go in intuitively and fast track you on your healing journey, because I tune into your spirit guides that know you, and they're screaming, tell her this, this will help. They give me tools to pass on to you that are useful for you to start healing yourself and progressing forward. And when I get into that energy, my heart just lifts, and I just feel a real sense of positive purpose. So that's my happy zone. That's my happy place. I would love to transition. At the moment, I work in, bookkeeping and payroll, and, that used to be my passion, but it's not anymore. So that is what I hope for myself, is to grow this business and, really help others.
Yeah, thank you, Donna. Donna, one final message. What is one key message that you'd like the audience to keep after the podcast is finished?
Just, I don't know, this gives you courage, helps you find a voice, inspires you to just want better for yourself, just draw on my strength and find your own, and just know that you're not alone on this journey. Even though it's only you that can do the work, you're not alone. There's many, many places of different things. Keep your eyes open for what pops up in front of you, what your friends might be suggesting, and, just really honestly look past the fear and see what resonates with you to step up and have a go at, because there's not just one answer. One thing might get you to a certain place, and then it'll be a different thing that takes you to the next place. So just keep moving forward, be kind to yourself, and yeah, you'll get there. You'll get there. There's light at the end of all of this.
Yeah. Wonderful. Donna, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know parts of that were very hard to share, but I really appreciate it. And I really hope that the women who need to hear this will hear this. Thanks again, Donna.
Thank you so much, Natalie.